Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Rock Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
Welcome back to Grok Talk. It is December 20th, 2014, 10 a.m. segment 3. I'd like to remind you to check us out on Stitcher, iTunes, Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, or Ustream. This program is paid for entirely by us. We are not funded by anybody. So if you want to make a donation, go to GraniteGrok.com. Toss some nickels, dimes, pennies, or dollars into the donate jar, if you would please, to help keep the program on the air. And we'd like to continue to thank the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers who have been so kind to allow us to use this space every Saturday to make sure you can get your programming. Once again, thanks to Guy Comtois and Jane Cormier, who are still here listening in the studio. But we'd like to get to our next guest, who's somebody we've had on a couple of times. And it's a good time to have him on because we've heard this rumor that we might be getting this huge snowstorm, but that it also might be a huge rainstorm. Joe DeLeo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm going to disappoint those that are hoping for a white Christmas and a big snowstorm storm for ski country, but we may get a dusting to coating the next couple of days, but Christmas Eve will be heavy rain and a warm-up. But then we transition back to winter over Christmas week, and you'll feel like winter's really here. We'll hear the term polar vortex come back when we get into January.
I did see that you guys were saying that over like the next 6 weeks after Christmas, heading into February, is expected to be really, really cold. Why? Can you explain? I don't know. I mean, you guys do a great job of doing it at Weatherbelt. Can you just explain to our listeners what factors are involved in that prediction and why you think that's going to happen?
Yes. Well, we do what we call an analog method, where we look at conditions in the oceans, not just El Nino and La Nina, but the state of the Atlantic and Pacific, and particularly warm pools and cold pools in different parts of the ocean. Look at years that had similar conditions, and we find that very often, when we include also the solar activity, the winds in the upper atmosphere, and other factors, the years that match best with what the conditions are this year look alike. And so we use a composite, a blending of all of those years as our forecast. And that worked very well for us last winter, when the summer before, all the stars aligned and said it was going to be an historic winter, especially near the Great Lakes, and I think you know it was. The coldest December to March ever in Chicago, snowiest winter.
What are we talking about?
In Detroit, and
Oh, okay.
And the most ice on the Great Lakes in record. Well, those conditions, a lot of them are still in place this year. We are moving into an El Nino, but it's the kind of El Nino that tends to be cold when we get to January and February. The Eastern Pacific is warm, which is going to favor the cold. And we said January especially would be cold. Now, November was cold. It was the snowiest November on record for the U.S. and the 16th coldest since 1895. December was much warmer. It was an up and down kind of December, but we'll go back into the cold, and it should linger into the early part, at least of the early part of February. But we'll really feel the cold Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, and into the first part of January, at the very least. It'll be extreme.
Yeah, Joe, this is Skip again, and I want to say thanks for coming on the show. I was sort of the impetus for having you on the show because I was over at Anthony Watts's blog site, What's Up With That, and I saw that he had posted the chart of what Weatherbell put out, and I caught the phrase, the Great New England Blizzard of 1978, and I was living in Boston at that time, going to Boston University, and I remember what happened in Boston, Kenmore Square area and all of that, and I'm thinking, holy cow, this could be interesting. And, your projection is that this is going to be as strong, a low-pressure area as strong as some of the hurricanes that come up the coast that hit us here in New England. I was thinking, okay, it's been cold. It looked like the high was, the low was, just off to our west, and I'm thinking this could be just a ton of snow. And yes, afterwards, WMUR Channel 9 here in New Hampshire was saying rain, rain, rain. So that was one reason for asking you to come on and talk about this. But what is the strength of the storm going to be, whether it's snow or rain?
Well, it's going to be quite a storm, a very deep low, but it'll be into the Great Lakes. What most people don't remember about 1978 was there actually were three major blizzards. There was the one we remember here in the east that paralyzed our area and shut down the state of Massachusetts and pretty much stopped travel for days elsewhere. But there was one a week or so before that went into the Great Lakes that the one that Weatherbell's Ryan Maui was comparing it to. It was a very, very strong low that with very low pressure that crossed into the Great Lakes, produced a lot of snow in parts of the Great Lakes in Ohio Valley and very cold weather behind it, and actually produced rain here in New England. We had a snowstorm a week or so prior to that. We had rain and warmth with that storm, and then the big blizzard followed. So we had three in a row. And 1977-78 is one of our what we call analog years that has a lot of similarities to this year. This is the Great Lakes storm. We may get our chance come a little later.
Joe, I was doing some pre-show research, and I came across an article where you were interviewed by CNS News back in mid-November, and you said, from the government's own data, there's been no warming in winter for 25 years. In fact, there's been cooling for 20 years. All 9 climate regions have cooled in winter for 20 years. The quote is, this decade is just 4 years old, and we've already had 12 major impact East Coast snowstorms out of close to 50 since the 1950s, which they call NESIS storms. This is the most active, snowiest decade on record. The last decade, the 2000s, had 10. The 60s had 10. This decade has 12, and we're only 4 years into it. We could really be creating an historic decade when all is said and done. What are we looking at here?
Well, it certainly looks that way. I would think we'll add maybe even half a dozen more before the decade is up, considering the direction the oceans and the sun is heading. So it's if people tell you, boy, it just doesn't snow like it did when I was a boy. Usually I say, yeah, well, when you were a boy, you were 2 feet tall,
yeah.
and so 6 inches of snow seemed like a lot of snow to you, but actually we're rivaling and surpassing the great snow years.
So now you've also said that the sun appears to be heading into a 200-year minimum. Clearly, that's going to have an impact.
Yes.
You talk about water temperatures. I want to encourage people to go to Weatherbell, and you may not need to have premium service unless you love the weather and you want to get all the good details. But Joe Bastardi's Saturday Summary is something that you should look at, just because you'll get an idea of what the experts are looking at and how far ahead you can see what the weather's going to be like, and you can learn some things about weather. You'll learn some terms. It's a lot of fun.
Right. And then we do a lot more, of course, in the premium every day, and we'll explain why we this rainstorm is coming and when it's going to change and why we still believe January is going to be brutal on our premium service. And you get a lot of pretty maps, too. Very high-resolution global maps go out to 16 days and in some cases months into the future. So we have a lot of weather enthusiasts that that use our site and for their own enjoyment, but some business people obviously want to plan ahead. And November, no doubt, helped the sweater sales.
Yeah.
I think the last few weeks may have slowed that down a little bit, but they'll be sorry if they didn't get the sweaters come January.
One of the things that I do read is, as you could tell, is what's up with that blog site, because while it gets into a fair amount of technical detail, if you are of a STEM variety kind of guy, you can pretty much follow along most of it. If I spend a lot of time every day, I could probably pick up most of it. But there was a chart that kind of struck out at me really hard, because we've been hearing from the government that we're getting warmer and warmer and warmer, yet there's a chart up on that site that says over the last 2,000 years that high temperatures in Europe have been going down, which basically says are we past our warm period and starting to go, as what you said about the going into a 200-year minimum of the sun activity. Are we really starting to repeat what I heard, and probably you did as well, in the early 70s, mid-70s, that we're heading into a mini ice age again? So are we getting whipsawed? Are we getting the wrong information? Or what's the deal here, sir?
We are getting the wrong information, and you can prove anything with statistics. They have removed in the U.S. data and don't have in the global data any adjustment for urbanization. And as we know, the population of the world has gone from 1 billion to 7 billion. Most of the temperatures are measured at airports, in cities, in urban areas where, as we all know, cities are warmer than you get out to the rural areas. And that warming in the cities contaminates the data. Virtually all the warming they report over the last 120 years has been urban warming. There is a cyclical change in that due to changes in the ocean and the sun that is about 60 years. You can see those cycles if you look at that. And our own government actually did a calculation where they looked at long-term trends in both nighttime and daytime temperatures, and they found that nighttime temperatures is where we're seeing all the warming, and daytime temperatures really haven't changed much. Well, that's the classic urban heat island effect, because if you listen to your local news, they'll say tonight will be in Boston low around 40, but it'll be in the upper 20s when we get out to the suburbs. Tomorrow's high will be around 50. So the daytime temperatures are pretty uniform in the city and rural areas. It's night times that is a big difference. And without that, they used to have a correction for that, but they took that out for political reasons, and that's what they're using that surface-based temperature trends to try to drive policies. Unfortunately, we do have satellites that don't have any political agenda, and measure every single part of land and ocean globally, but unfortunately they only go back to 79. They started measuring temperatures with that, and they are showing there's been no warming. They agree that there's been no warming for 18 to 20 years, and even globally, and the pause, they call it.
Joe, Guy Comtois here. Back, I think, 10, 12 years ago, the History Channel did a special on Little Ice Age, Big Chill, and they talked about the 500-year Little Ice Age that started, pretty much ushered in the Dark Ages in Europe, where it was a 3-degree temperature change, and it had crops failing, and, of course, nutrition was a problem, then disease come in, and all the way into the days of the Revolutionary War, where I think it was in the 1700s, up in this part of New Hampshire, in June, they got a couple feet of snow, correct?
Right. In 1816, later on in another cold period, the 200-year cycle, we had the year without a summer where it snowed in June and the crops failed.
Right. Because we.
Okay.
Hang on, we're pushing a lot of buttons here. I got phones coming in and stuff. We're gonna take a quick break right here. Joe, stay on the line. We have somebody else calling in who's also into meteorology, and we want to get them in on the conversation. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.
We are Grok Talk, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and the bloggers at granitegrok.com. Thanks to everyone who tunes in every week, and if you miss us for the live show, you can still catch us on Stitcher, iTunes, Spreaker, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio. We are also on YouTube in both audio and video format, and Ustream, which we're streaming live if you want to watch the program, or you can watch it later after the fact because they save it for a little while. And Skip is showing Jane's on TV. Look at that. All right. We're currently on the phone with Joe DeLeo, and from IceCap, where he writes, and weatherbell.com, where he works. And we've also got another person on the phone who is not just a fan of Joe's, but the weather and meteorology in general. Ron Moore is on the phone. Ron?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, great to have you on. And Joe's on the other line. Joe?
Yes.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Ron. Hi.
Hello, Joe. Pleasure to speak with you. You've been one of my heroes for a number of years here. So
Oh, that's great.
So
quite an honor here.
So we were talking. I'm trying to screw around with these levers to get my music to sound right and everything. We were talking about potential. Guy was talking about the potential ice age. You brought it up, and I think I interrupted Joe. I don't remember. What were we talking about?
I think you were talking about snow in the summer in one of the.
That's right. Yep, Guy had asked you about that. Yep.
Yeah, and then 1816 was called the year without a summer. As Ron can tell you, that there was almost every month we had a frost or a freeze, and we had some snow in June, and the crops failed here in the Northeast. And we're in a similar. We're heading in a similar direction as the what we call the Dalton minimum, the solar minimum, the 200-year mini ice age, and so we're concerned not about global warming and rising sea levels, but cold winters. And if you study the effects of extreme weather, cold is far more dangerous than warm. Would you believe that 35,000 people in the UK die every year in winter? They call that excess winter mortality over the rest of the other 8 months of the year. And almost 500,000 in all of Europe and Russia die each winter from the cold, not from the heat, from the cold. So if we get a colder period coming up, and we are not set with our energy policy, and I think that's a story for another day, but we're going down a lot of the wrong paths there. We could be dealing with brownouts and blackouts, and that's not just inconvenient like it is in summer, but in winter it can be deadly.
Ron, did you guys want to get into the weeds on anything?
No, I'll just say exactly what Dr. D or Joe just said about the cold coming and everything else. And I would also say this, too, give Weatherbell kudos. Their company, I've been on there since day one. I'd followed Joe Pistardi in his previous life before that, and then I came on board there, and I'll tell you, their site is awesome. Not just for what it offers in maps and all the obvious, but their forums, their blogs, I mean, really, really good stuff. And I can say that having followed quite a few different blogs over the years in different places, they give follow-up with a lot of the information we just chatted about, or that Dr. Joe just mentioned about the ice age and what's coming around now. He's exactly right. One of the things I do outside just loving weather, and you met my son Josh already, Josh Moore.
Yep.
We chase storms. Chased them since I grew up in West Texas in 1980, and it's not really empirical data, but it is to me. The number of tornadoes has gone way down. We're out there every spring chasing. Not much to see. I mean, it's a great country to visit, but we go out there to see storms, and there's a big reduction in them this year. And even the El Reno tornado that was supposed to be the largest, most powerful one has been knocked down to, I believe, a strong F3 now because they had to do recalibration on radar estimates and stuff like that. So a lot of the data thrown at us, as Dr. D just said a minute ago, was the stats can be cooked, and that's true. They can rig these numbers out to be what they want to be, and instead of taking on what's really coming up and what's really a danger to us, we're making up things. And you don't have to make up storms. We're going to get some big ones. I did have a question for Dr. D, if I could give it out.
Mm-hmm.
The storm this week is going to be rain. Exactly right on that. And your models, the Dr. Ryan Malley's put together, are awesome. They actually indicate some fierce winds coming into the coast Christmas Eve evening. I'm looking at them this morning, and they show some pretty powerful winds. What's your thoughts on that? Anything for like a...
Yes, when those storms go to the west and we warm up, that's when we're subject to the greatest wind. Very often in winter, as you know, when we're dealing with cold air and low levels, the winds blow in these storms, but they blow above the surface. Then we get a low level, a layer of cold air that acts like it's an inversion, but it acts to lift the wind above the surface, so we don't have the damaging winds. But when the storm goes well to your west and you're able to warm up, you're really subject to very strong winds. So I do think Ron's exactly right. This could be a storm with lots of wind on the coast, a lot of coastal wind damage.
I want to do. I just watched Joe's summary last week, and I noticed this from time to time. I don't get to watch it every week, but have you seen a trend where the maps that we're getting from the Canadian and the Europeans are consistently more effective than the ones that we're finding in the U.S., or is that just maybe something that happens once in a while?
Well, I think Ron will attest that the most skillful models are the European model, and the Canadian high resolution model is improved greatly too. The U.S. is trying to improve their models by going to a high resolution, and we'll see if that helps. But we think the physics are an issue. We think they don't initialize the models. That's very important. If you put garbage in, you get garbage out, and they want to be first to get their models out, so they don't. Very often, what goes into the model forecast is a forecast from the last time they ran the model, and some new data, rather than the European, which waits for all the new data so they get the best initial conditions, and they have a better chance of getting a forecast right 10 days out than the U.S. models. So there is a significant difference between the models. And that's one of the challenges that all our forecasters, TV weather guys, and Weather Bell, and have is we're looking at a lot of different solutions, and we have to pick from among them. Sometimes even the best model, a European, will throw out because for one reason or another, it has its own biases. We think in this case, in a case, the U.S. model is better. So it's really detective work that goes into the forecast, even a few days out, but certainly into seasonal and long-range forecasting.
Ron?
Yeah, so I agree. I couldn't say any more to it.
Okay.
You said exactly right. That's my preference, too.
Is there any... as a rule, do all the TV forecasters and stuff look at all the models? Is there any, and as a side question, is there any political pressure anywhere to not be as accurate as maybe you'd want to be?
There is a push on TV meteorologists to try to connect any kind of extreme weather to climate change, the politics. They resist, and most TV stations say, no, don't make any comments about it because not all of our audience believes, in global warming, and no matter which side of you come down on it, you're going to turn off eyeballs, and then they're in the business of getting as many eyeballs as they can in television. So most TV meteorologists stay away from the climate issue. Mm-hmm. But they do tend to hype everything as a superstorm or Sandy, though, was the worst hurricane that hit the East Coast. And
Joe said they were invoking the Pineapple Express this week.
Yes, right. They love these new terms that sound like something new is happening and that we're responsible for. The Pineapple Express, the polar vortex. And Ron will tell you the polar vortex is up there even in the summer. Mm-hmm. It just is where it was, and the fact that it was so persistent last year that made it so remarkable. But and in terms of the extremes, what he said about tornadoes, this is one of the quietest years, if not the quietest year on record. Oh, yeah. And we had fewer forest fires than any year in going back to 1984. We had obviously died of a hurricane season in the Atlantic. We had more extreme cold, record cold, than when we had any record heat. The sea levels have slowed in their rise. All these things you don't hear about, but you only hear about every extreme weather event as if it's a sign if you don't we don't do something about keeping fossil fuels in the ground. We're all going to see a lot more of, and that's the.
We're going to actually run into the end of the segment here. Do you guys want to hang on for a few more minutes, and then we'll bring you back for a few more minutes in the next segment? Okay, sure. All right, great, thanks. I'll leave you two guys on the line. I'm not hanging up on you. I'm just, you can listen to the background music. You're still there. We'd like to thank Joe DeLeo and Ron Moore, who are on to talk to us about weather and climate. We have to take a quick break, about 2.5 to 3 minutes, and then we'll be right back. I didn't hit my music, so everything's going to be screwed up on my timing. But hey, I'll just fix it post-production, because that's what I do. This is Grok Talk. I'm here with Skip Murphy. My name's Steve McDonald. Joe DeLeo and Ron Moore are on the line. And hold, and we will be right back.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Jean Shaheen and her allies are making false claims about her record on veterans. The truth? Shaheen refused to meet with veterans pushing for reform. She wasn't on the committee that wrote the reform legislation and refused to co-sponsor important VA reforms in the VA Management Accountability Act until after the VA scandal broke. When our veterans needed her, Jean Shaheen was AWOL. Tell Jean Shaheen to stop distorting the truth and fix the VA.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. If you have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Rock Talk.